Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. This is Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and this is Jupiter hour in Luna Day, and the moon is in 25 degrees Sagittarius, squaring Neptune. However, we have Jupiter hour, and Jupiter is in Gemini, retrograde, and ruling over Saturn. And we have Venus, the midheaven is right on Venus, which is trining Uranus. And she's about to conjoin Pluto. Okay? And so let's talk about power. Okay? Let's talk about power. Power is such a Pluto theme. I'm in my Pluto square, so that's kind of going back to everything I learned basically about power. And one of the things that I was exposed to, and I see a lot of spiritual teachers talk about it, and I find it very true. I think Gigi Young mentioned that in her own way, April from the Imagination podcast. And you have to understand that there is such a tremendous attempt to enforce power that, of course, people would take, let's say, a person like April, maybe force her to put a Rosicrucian sign in order to bring in the voices and maybe hunt down the people who speak and target them. That happens even without them turning to April, okay? So there are people from within the cult and from outside the cult. There are attempts to cause like traps to people. I mean, when I spoke with a woman that suddenly said like, "Oh, this you smell so lovely," and so on and so forth, and started blurting things that are, you know, you kind of see that what you're speaking with, but I say, "Oh, fuck it," we'll have a normal conversation. I'll say what I have to say, and I'll treat it like a human being, and we'll just separate our own separate ways. Because that's the thing. And she told me that she, as a teacher, see her own fellow teachers go through these basically MK Ultra phases where they become an other. Okay, so let's talk about power. And the equation with power is that the minute you have to use power, and I'm not talking about asserting your sovereignty, okay? Asserting your sovereignty is not a power over others. It's standing in your power, and that's the Pluto lesson, okay? That's the authenticity lesson, is to stand in our power, okay? To stand our ground. It sextiles Neptune, so we have a good harmony and balance between standing our ground and surrendering the process, or surrendering. I remember the Me Too era where I was like, what do I want? Autonomy over my body. How do I do it? I stand in my power and surrender. I surrender into my power. I surrender into myself. Okay? And so I said, well, instead of saying, oh, he did that, and he did that, and he did that, and he did that, well, I can begin to express myself, knock down the walls, and then point to what I do like and start practicing that. And then I learned some new stuff, okay? Like people try to siphon your sexual energy for all kind of dumbfuckery. And like, okay, I had no idea that such stupid things exist in the world. But I'm like, okay, fine. So you get another thing. And so if in the beginning I was exploring my sensual pleasure and slowly like releasing it into myself, then it was like, well, teachings about defeat and stepping on fertile soil. And then I was like going, I think it was at a hospital, I was standing on the soil. It was like at the hospital, I was like, well, it's already a crazy house, so what's the problem? You stand on and you basically kind of hug a tree or something. And there's a yoga teacher that's on par with that. So everything is fine. Then you go out and then you step on the soil and you put the crystals that I put on my body. And it looks really funny, but it's anywhere near as ridiculous as the reason why you do that to begin with. Okay? And then you begin to step on soil, and then you begin to have the importance of having soil around you growing a garden, all these nice things that I wasn't doing before. Okay. And then there's like this, self-expression. So let's do something about my garden or something about astrology. Let's try to make some money. And there's like, no taxation, it goes to human trafficking. Okay, halt, let's stand to human trafficking. That's standing in your power. And so and then you have to surrender. It's kind of like, what can I do but stand in my power, right? What can I do but grow even more authentically into my own power, my own self? Okay, I got a Pluto square in Venus transit from my 12th house, and I'm like, what can I do but stand in my powers? What can I do but stand for, even deepen the value of willing consent? Okay. It ain't nothing. It is even deeper. The practice of building a garden, building a forest. I got some trees or plants. Somebody put some plants in. I hope they're gonna grow. But it's like, hey, I'm building something, and somebody added some trees, and I'm like, oh, that's very nice. So I watered them, and I hope that they will grow or survive. They need to grow roots. So yeah, all well. This was a very funny thing because it was a new moon applying to square Saturn, and I said to my mama, okay, I want to plant some seeds of like tomatoes or peppers, and she's like, no, 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 you dig these holes is enough, no more, no more. Then somebody else put some trees. I was like, okay, somebody will put them, so I'll just water them. Okay. So you see how that the square with Saturn worked in that way. And then I really wanted to do a solve. And I made a huge chunk that my entire druzy olive oil went into solve. And I got some Annuncia. Okay, I diluted some Annuncia and Regulus and talismanic like butter or something that I made, and oil, and something that went very concentrated, and then something that went too watery, and some other talisman I made into a solve. Shout out to Helwa's Astra. I hope she will be making solves, because like I just put the remnants, some of her Venus in Taurus butter into a solve with some added oils. Oh, and together with my Vino Beta per se, no, Urano Beta per se. And that smells so good. Great product that she came up with. And I did a little blend of my own. And I'm like, hey, I'm waiting for solves from Helwa's Astro as well. So now going back to power, okay? Exerting power over others is a sign, as we know, of weakness. And that's something good to remember. I think the first person I heard saying that was Gigi Young, that she said that those structures that we see when Pluto was in Capricorn, they're crumbling, and the more that they're crumbling, the more we will see them trying to enforce themselves, okay, to coerce themselves. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Austin Coppock. I remember after one of his conferences, he said about beliefs. He said, well, if I believe something and I stand in my belief, I'm not threatened by another person, classic Piscean 9th house, okay? I'm not threatened by another person holding another belief, okay? I don't feel like I have to defend myself. I don't feel, okay, all these things. It's usually upon the growth when we feel that, unless, of course, somebody else tries to force their belief on us. And sometimes there's just an encounter. It's like somebody comes with a worldview, you come with a worldview, and there's like, oh, you do that because you believe so and so and so. I believe, like, I can see how that supports you. I believe so and so and so, and I can see how that supports me. And it can be growth or change or just understanding. But when we talk about power over others, the more, in politics and governance, there's the saying, I think it was Weber, about the monopoly, the legitimacy over the monopoly over power that, let's say, the state holds. Okay, so the states can hold, an A-bomb. You can't grow an A-bomb in your backyard. I mean, maybe you can, you know, but but the monopoly over power, it has legitimacy when it provides us more peace than without it. Okay. That being said, that also has a threshold. Like if you play with protection all day, eventually people are gonna say like, okay, you're like. I was talking about, drug cartels, and I said when medical weed became legal in Israel, and people had to go to the drug dealer because what they were providing was rubbish, okay, from the government. So they're like, okay, I have to, you have to do that if you want to relax or stand in distress, or you're a veteran or you're recovering from sexual trauma, okay. For me, I just don't like weed. That's the thing. I had a psychiatrist that offered me to do some weed, and I was like, no, I don't like smoking, and it doesn't like. Then you have munchies and stuff, and anyway, I didn't have too much money to buy food, so. But that's different for every person. Some people that's helpful for them. I like essential oils, then that's pretty nice. And you had to go to the health cell to buy some quality weed to take care of whether it was cancer or whether it was PTSD or sexual trauma, and that's just the market. You just need to go with that. And so when you think about the legitimacy of the monopoly over power of the state, it relaxes, right? But when you play with that too much, and you can't differentiate with the crime organization or the country, you're like, hey, both of you pretty suck. Okay? And you need another alternative. So the more power tries to enforce itself, the more it tries to close in on someone, speaking as a targeted individual, who is the second generation to targeted individual, I think even third, because when my grandfather was trying to just have a business, it's just a grocery store, okay? People did not have, it's not that they did not have business mindset, it's just it was all espionage, and my grandfather was not a spy. So he went out of the ghetto, but he wasn't particularly spy. And so everybody was like, oh, too bad that Hitler didn't finish the job. I was just thinking today about, the fact that I'm like being the experience of a third generational targeted individual, basically. And I kind of remember when I was saying to my mom, like, you're right about all these things that you write about, and of course that's going to happen. And then she stopped writing, and I started, the threshold was about healing myself, staying alive, staying in my body. I had to speak. And then it was like, kind of like, But the thing is, by the time I was targeted individuals, kind of like most things I didn't even need to put into detail. Whereas before that, I was just avoiding that, like the rest of the folks. I was like, hey, I'm going to do, live my life and so on and so forth. And yeah, right, with Pluto 0 degree Scorpio in the 9th house. But you see, the more that you try to close in on a person, what basically happens is that they're closing in on themselves. Because if somebody targets you in a certain way, then to curate your presence in your body, you need to speak. Okay? Then you expose stuff. Like if I think about me in 2017, where there was this weird cult thing, and then I went to therapy. And I was just like, okay, I'll treat, my own patterns. And then it's like, it's intergenerational change. So let's go to talk about like the sex that I do want, and sell workshops to people that do want to work on self-pleasure. And find, and, see it as an opportunity to grow, rather than, get stuck in the rut of like a person that could be my father, and doesn't, like, he never grew to will and consent. That's where it was at. I released. Okay? I never even said his name until it was like, I don't know how long. But the thing is, there's energy. If you're out venting, like, it's okay to vent to people. It's not, it's like, you can vent to people. You just, somebody said no. You can vent to people. She's a whore. She's a crazy. She's a this. She's a that. Everybody vents. Okay, that's fine. But I think, he gotta know. Okay, fine. But the thing is that I would never have gotten to know of what I know had I not been so severely targeted. And never, never would I ever. I would have just lived my life, but I knew by that time that I can't just work in some place, so I did what I could for, when I started working for this international business, working, selling sex positive, like teachings, courses and stuff, it was the time where people began to talk to their vagina. I kind of missed on that because I was too MK Ultra targeted and I didn't know to give it a name. So, but people started talking with their genitals and it was pretty nice. Think about Taurus as Venus, and Venus is the voice, and Venus is also, the vagina. There's like talking to it, having a conversation. And men had a problem with that, and I didn't understand why. I had no idea of this cult. It was actually Ido that explained to me that was like for power, and I was like, okay, but power is like, standing you. You didn't think too much about that. And then it's like, no, that's like that the men are having, like, they're going to war and then they're befriending, feeling belonging and brotherliness around humiliating women. And I'm like, that's so fucking dumb. Especially when you think about when the man is going to war, the woman is feeling that in the womb. So it's like, it's such a dumb fuckery thing. But I had no idea it goes to like incest cults and stuff like that. And I felt that with the way, like the triggers I had around it was like something that reminds of like incest. But that was just me trying to recover, okay? And so the thing is, if I hadn't been so targeted, never would I ever come to expose an international scandal, okay? That involve Israel and Netherlands and 2 generations of people. I don't know, like that was just so fucking weird. And cameras and real estate, and I'm like, damn, like, but and the fact that they want to enslave humanity, and I'm like, okay, I'm the one of the JFKs, I guess. Well, there were some preliminary signs in high school. So, when you think about the fact that the more they exert power, I'm not saying this person, that person, it's a weird system, I don't know. But the more that they exert power is basically the more they're closing in on themselves, because there's masses of people dealing with that. So you think about, you have one small channel on YouTube, another, okay? And all these tiny channels, thinking that, that's just, and then you have, it's like, they amass to something, and the more masses they send on people, do you think about one person? I remember when April from Imagination Podcast said that, it's called gang stalking, and that's just so fucking weird. It's like you live in a hologram, okay? And I was like, that's just so much energy on targeting each and every individual. And there's so many of us. There's so many of us. And that's so much investment. Even if you put an AI to work, your servers are going to crash. And that's a teaching about power. Okay, when somebody already tries to force themselves on you, it means that they're incredibly a weak link. For example, there was a person that was working in the garden. There was a person who was watching me. I was like, is everything okay? I was like, you're watching me. I was like, let's give each other some space, okay? Then he's standing there, and I'm like, you know what? My mother came down. I was like, you know what? I couldn't stand so many hours. Whoever put you to stand here, they're not gonna pay you. You let someone treat you like this, which is like a slave, they're not gonna pay you. It's a betrayal-based cult. Okay? Think about it. Arbeit macht nicht frei. You put a person to be a watchdog over somebody that's digging up a garden. And that's like, okay, you think about the many, and I saw that with my mom. It would be so strange. And that's just like, there's so much energy invested in each and every individual. I'm like, damn, if you put that energy into people growing prosperously, you would cut fine dividends. It pays way more than human trafficking. And then you know what happens with the naming, because in the beginning you don't see a name, then they push you, then you say a name. And then you say, well, is it sexual harassment? I don't know if it's sexual harassment or what it is. It's like these weird hypnotic things. And I'm like, what's that? Let's learn about ESP. Oh, the guy's a remote viewer. Why? Like, he could use it like for search and rescue. They're like, why don't they? I mean, oh, because they're targeting individuals instead of like finding kidnapped people. Oh, they're kidnapping people, and they do use it for that. But that works his senses off. That's so fucking strange. And it's like, okay, well, why would he do that? I mean, I left. I mean, fine. I mean, you go on with your life. I mean, you were married anyway. What's the point? I'm the person who's like, doesn't know what to do with the job, or how to get a house and so on. And then you go into like a phase where they like try to communicate with you and so on. It's like, well, that was fucking human trade. That's a human trafficking ring, what you were part of. In the most naive way, because you think about you sitting a year with that person every Sunday in a pub, okay, they're drinking beer, you're drinking grapefruit or something, and with the students, and that's like the person you've come to know, okay? So you speak to them like a human being, right? That's the point. And you're like, what is off with this person? Like, okay, he's a spy. Fine, he's a spy, okay, but what? No, that's like a double agent thinking. Okay, if it's like the programming is like, oh, that's the programming stuff. Yeah, that I saw that they have like this. They had the ticks and so on. It's like a change in phase. And then you see symbolism of your satire in a military operation, and that's like, that's so fucking strange. Okay? And they're like, what was this person a part of? And then they kind of they tell you about, like, you put some things in the freezer or the cream or something, like you talk about defreeze. And I remember when I put the name, I was like, yeah, when I put the name, I was like, no, defreeze. I'm like, okay, what do you want? Okay, so this is just so funny. And the way that these things work, you think, who would believe you? What would you actually, every influencer is targeted this way. Who's gonna know? WHO. Okay? They're all targeted. They're all targeted individuals. I remember Jag, and when I need to put a boundary, I put a boundary. Okay, it doesn't mean that I don't support a person coming out of the dumbfuckery that they've been in. And I remember Jack talking about the fact that she's been targeted individual, and it's not just like, whatever, we think that entails. Is also, and she alluded to witchcraft, and that's just exactly, that's what it is. Okay, but then they would torture her, and then she would have to do that to others. That's the MK Ultra thingy. And take information from the girls. Okay, so that needs to, and then again, the solution is housing first. The solution is for the real estate. And then I know what happens with the real estate. Okay, so those things can be like really frustrating, but essentially, if you think about Kim Jong-un, okay, let's talk North Korea, okay, because like what's the fright? North Korea, right? So let's talk about that. And you think about North Korea and you think about the fact that Kim Jong-un had an American citizen in North Korea. Now immediately that person got to jail because everything is illegal. It was in a working camp. So Kim Jong-un, frightened, okay, if you would read the email that Julian Assange exposed, that was almost sweaty, writes Hillary Clinton, and all he wanted is to have a meeting. They would play the hymn of North Korea, but they say that they will not invade the North Korea, that he is supreme leader of North Korea, and then they take this person, please, back. And, you know, if he could get that person on a bombardier instead of a Julian Assange, he would send them with a plane of gold and some goods from the kingdom, if there is any. If they haven't confiscated everything, and like beg her to just take that back. Deport that back, okay? Take your American. Don't invade us. So you see how creeped out Kim Jong-un was from the entire West, and now he declares a war on the West because he has to join the BRICS. Same intelligence all across the board, from China to USA. You think about the JFK, okay, the Cuba Missile Crisis. As of 1963, there is a direct line of communication between the Kremlin and Washington, D.C. and the White House, okay? I think it's in Washington, right? I could be wrong. It's a big conglomerate of countries, just like the former USSR. So, I mean, USA, if you're doing sex espionage, is gonna end up USSR. That's what happened. If you think about Eliza, she went there with the USSR. They took down the drug cartel, and the USSR fell. So she was not speaking against the government. She was taking out the drug cartel thing, working for the government, and then she wanted to get the fuck out of this rapey situation. She went to the United States, and then unfortunately she had to deal with with their stuff. But if you do sex espionage with the Netherlands, it's that time of the season when Uranus is with the moon, okay? We had a basement in some rural place where my uncle lives, a couple of blocks nearby, and a basement exploded, 42 apartments evacuated, and he had this dog in. It's like this you know, the Dutch dogs, right? The classical Dutch dogs. They had two of these, and the dog was in. He has to wait for his, you know, he's working as a taxi driver, so has to wait until he comes back, and calms the dog. What's for the basement to explode? What was in the basement? Unfortunately, probably people. So, again, the more power is exerted, the less legitimacy there is to exert this power. I think during COVID, a lot of people that were, you know, that were unmasking also from being neurodivergent, or unmasking from many other things where they were masking, and they began to unmask. And then Musk bought Twitter. And we discovered, you know, people were grieving the pronouns, but we discovered some other things that were going on that were not being exposed to. I mean, Musk literally has these testimony on his platform with the Imagination podcast, and he testifies against him and Trump, okay? While Julian Assange had to say there isn't anything on Trump, because otherwise, he has to rely on someone. And you see that the more power is exerted, basically the more collapse we have. And then the pattern is like to try to exert more and more and more power. It's just a threshold that is like, okay, it's not, it's not, okay. Um, and so even with the programming, there's just so many survivors, and nearly all the survivors say, if they would have just let me go and live my life when I left the cult, I would have just gone and live my life. Like, that was that cult is that global intelligence, that global government. And so the more they invest into, like, really each and every individual, okay? But it also causes us to rethink our own upbringing, rethink to contextualize our lineages, um, to rethink a lot of notions that maybe we've been carrying with us, um, and, grow as society. Okay, to rethink a lot of things, people, things that we haven't been considering, and to understand that really that the more they try, the more they die. It's like, you scare someone with something. It's like, well, I have been silencing myself for so and so decades. When the threshold was crossed, I was speaking out. Then I had to to fend for myself. Information was coming in, and I am aware of the importance of speaking up to remaining alive. And I'm aware of the many ailments that occur in the body when that is when I repress myself, okay? And so this is also where you become aware of more and more things, and then you really understand that if they really invest so much into that, it's a collapse. They're collapsing themselves. If I think about the video that I did today, and it's Mars opposing Pluto, and I was like, okay, so how does it feel to be in perpetual war? And I was thinking about some of the people who targeted me, and I was like, if I think about Ido was reading Mein Kampf and saying, not in the supporting Hitler, no, just don't make it like, I'm not framing him in that way. I was like, I'm not framing him, he's framing himself. Like, okay, I don't need, like, I actually advocate for him, and he frames himself again and again and again. I was like, I guess that's the MK Ultra thingy, but I fend for myself and set my boundaries. But I think it was reading to us from Mein Kampf, and I was like, yeah, Hitler was a failed painter, and I was like, wouldn't it be like, I'm half that, like, it's okay to have failed painters too, and they also need to make, to be able to live good and to be supported and to have housing, do not do a Holocaust. Okay, but I was thinking about that, and like how stupid Hitler had this, and I was like, if you think about, since I know this person, or since, like, I've been targeted by this person that I don't even know when it was actually, because who the fuck knows. Who knows, that's for sure. But but I think about, you were disgracing, you were making a joke of Hitler, but your life is literally a Mein Kampf. You're in a constant war against the most peaceful person on the entire planet. And if that's not enough, he hated green. And I had a Libra friend that did an AI version of my photos. Now, when somebody does a good version of your photos and you don't have budget for filmmaking or photography or anything like that, you are just keeping that profile picture. Okay? Now the stalker's thinking it's against them. It's not. I had a Libra friend. She was putting that. My color is Venus. Okay, that's green. And that's the editing of my Libra friend. And I just keep it that way. I don't have money for photography session, especially not when those people are MK Ultra. Now you got people thinking you're a snob, you're a this, you're a that, you're a green, you're a Palestinian, you're a this, you're a that. Nothing. I had a Libra friend editing my photo. She put the throne on my head, which was even more funny. And that's my profile picture. That's just happened, okay? And now a person thinks you're against them with basically showing up in the world. And so much energy dedicated, okay, to each and every, like, I really, I'm smart, my mom is smart, my mom is talented, I am talented. There are billions of talented people all around the world going through the same dumb fuckery. Will they let Elon combine his solar battery with his solar car without the breastfeeding from the gemeente? Okay? Teka vesheka. By the way, Elon, was my bum hairy today? Because I didn't notice. I must say it, when I see those weird cameras out, I'm just turning to Elon. He is responsible for the infrastructure of, like, hey, at least let's make a good use of it. Is my bum hairy today? Do I need to do something about that? Do you think that was clean? I mean, if that's what you're doing up in the sky, then at least let's make the technology work for me, right? Think about the algorithm. Remember when they began to surveil our choices? So they made an algorithm to learn more about us. And I'm like, some people are like, I'm going to follow the algorithm. I'm going to this. I'm going to take my photos of this. I'm like, the only reason I'm not showing my face right now is because I'm not maked up and my hair looks kind of like it needs a shower. Like, really, I ain't got time to mess with that surveillance dumbfuckery. Okay? If you do something that's not, it's like it's against my will, then you're gonna get exposed. And then it's kind of like, well, the knowledge gets you. And then I guess, I think there was a time where each and every individual was thinking this done only to them. Because it really looks like you're the state's enemy. You feel like you're in a James Bond movie with you being James Bond. And I'm in numerological year 1. Okay? But when you get how many targeted individuals are there, and in my point of view, it's like they want us to cover ourselves, they want us to disappear, and then nobody would see what one person does to another. And I'm like, now. You think I grew up in Israel? We were having bombs everywhere and explosions and suicide bombers. And I know that the country, and I know, but I'm talking about a simple expression. Like, there's like every second somebody could bomb themselves. Okay, what are you going to do? So you stay at house, and you cross the threshold, fuck it. And so And then when something actually bothers you, so you tend to that, and then so like some more is exposed, some more is exposed, some more is exposed, and then each and every one of our masses upon masses of people. Today I was thinking, you know the song I Like Chinese by Monty Python? I was thinking, like, I like Chinese. They know what a dead van is. They have been through this way worse than even I have, and have had more than enough of enoughness of enough, just like me. I like Chinese. Okay? And I'm like, I have a place in my heart for Americans, because what we just received now with this MK Ultra, they've been through this through the generations. They were born into that. So I love Americans. Okay? And I like Palestinians because with the Palestinians, what is dumb fuckery that happened in 7th of October? That was them doing it to themselves every time. And then saying it's Israel. Isn't that what they say about us? I mean, 7th of October is definitely a planned invasion. It was Israel doing it to Israel as well. The infiltration of Israel, okay, fuck it, vaccinations, what is that global cause? It's like, and I kind of grow to like Israelis too, because it's like, hey, most of them are not, they call the Masons the free baboons. Instead of הבונים החופשיים, הבבונים החופשיים. So, and the thing is, like, they made it nice with the symbolism. So now, literally, you recognize that all over the world. And that's supposed to scare somebody, but then you kind of begin to see patterns. I remember, living in Beersheba for so long, as one of my neighbors, she remembered the city where it was crime organization brewed before they killed each other. And she said she was, one day somebody came to leave a door above her, come down to knock on her door. She understands she better open that door, because if he opens that door, it's even worse. And she opens that door and she said, Miss, don't worry, don't be afraid. If anybody even so much as touches your hair from your head, you come to me, I make everything okay. I want you to not be afraid, don't worry. And then she learned that they have this code that you don't hurt women and children. Okay, as far as they're concerned, they're doing business. Now you see, when some pharmaceutical company slaughters a couple of people that speak up against the fact that they nearly died from the medicine, ain't nobody knows. But when a drug cartel finishes a couple of people that go against his drug cartel, everybody knows. That's the difference. Now the difference being is, when it's the drug company, you're gonna get a side effect. You're gonna go to the hospital. You're gonna come out in a coffin. Ain't nobody knows. I mean, it's cardiac arrest. When it's a drug cartel, you're gonna hear shooting above your head. So when somebody says, "Let's have these guys deported," you say, "Yeah." Well, they're just evacuated for the WHO. That does it worse. Yeah, you ask yourself, how do we do business? And this is another thing with power, okay? Also, drug cartel. If you think about when Michael Jackson was filming in, I think it is a favela, I don't know how to say that, and some drug cartel that was governing the city, okay? So it's basically like the municipality. He said this city will be the safest place on earth for the time of the shooting. And I'm like, why only for the time of the shooting? Okay? But the best way to make a place a safe place is to provide. And there's enough, okay? We have technology to reforest the Sahara. That's good things. There's something growing, okay? So that's the story with power. Is the more somebody exerts a power over, is basically they're investing and they're depleting themselves. And funnily enough, the more it looks like all is like trying to close in on you, basically the more roads open for you. And the thing is, if you deal with something, for example, I know what they're after in the place where I live. They're after the oil and the gas, and they want to make a human trafficking so that you launder the money with the oil and the gas. I had no idea. It's good to know that before I do an investment portfolio, right? I'm 40. I'm not gonna budget for it. I'm not gonna ask for a salary if not that I can work for anyone, but I mean it's unfair of me. I will make a revolution in your business, and then you will hang me from the wall. I mean, you try. I'm a slippery fish, and I wouldn't understand why you didn't succeed. And I'm just meant to do something else, okay? And so, but let's say I did, I wouldn't budget, let's say, for products or something like that, without knowing, okay, for what can I invest in, how does it yield, and so on and so forth. So I can tell you, going from that, changing that mindset, is understanding, okay, how these markets work. And I'm like, oh, compound, the wonder of compound interest, talking about Neptune stuff and the bubbles and Saturn, okay, popping that bubble, it compounds to a world war. And now you get why. Okay, so that's how the interest compounds. And yes, and now we are at the time where in general there's solar energy. We can have energy from gravitational waves. I could say it's a patent of mine, but I just say it here because nobody can patent that now. I said I'm gonna do something like this. Well, it just happened. 47, 47. Okay, you can't patent that. And the thing about Aquarius, that the leakage to this supposedly invisible channel is so vast. There's just so many people that are aware just this very second. Who said that? Out of them, there are divergent interests. So some people want to plagiarize, some people want to confiscate, some people want to control. And some people want to say, oh my God, she's so right. I was just working on this technology. She says you can't patent that. And I was thinking, oh my God, what would I do with that patent? Because people get killed over innovating. And then there's another person, then there's another person, then there's another person. And all that amounts to way too many people gravitationally aware of the fact that the gravity that these cults hold, that the betrayal and control cult holds, is depleting itself. Because they have to invest so much. You think about the fact that, let's say you do magic, astrological magic. I'm so humbled by what Caitlin Koppock had to deal with, because and probably every astrological magician, but she was doing something new. And because I tend to the outer planets, fractions from capturing the B6 and just happens. Okay? That's quite rare. So let's say for me, but I'm sure I'm not the only person. Like people been knowing about it. Anybody's been doing talismans, and if people have been saying to Caitlin like, "Nah, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work," and doing butters themselves, probably very likely that's what they were doing. And I'm so humbled because they try to invert everything you do, and I'm like, that's so much dedication in your demise. By the way, I want everybody to give a round of applause. I found out that they were looking from the camera through the window, and I got the window, have the window in that property open, and I keep it open. And they were doing something like looking through that property, and I'm like, okay, it's like entering through the window when they're astral projecting or something. And I'm like, okay, that's too much Ghostbuster for me. I'm going to leave that window open. And that's it. I'm not going to, I'm not going to cover myself. I'm not going to, you know. I even so much as refused to close the front door when I was leaving there. Now my mom's like, we locked the door. You gotta lock the door. And even the market was like, you can't leave the door open. Fuck it. I was manifesting a home that is safe. I can walk in and out, and I can be safe and free at any time, at any hour of the day. And that's what's up. That's what's gonna be, okay? Anyway, guess what is back? I'm gonna give you a clue. It's a wave. I boiled the dumb fuckery. I want you to all congratulate the glass dildo. Now, anybody targeted individuals in the house, when they take something and then you find it in a place where there's absolutely nothing. And by the way, my mom found it. She didn't know what it is. She says, you have something from glass here. And it's a wave shape, so she wouldn't suspect anything. Okay, when you put that thing, my mom had it so many things. She would put something, then it would disappear, and then she would find it in another place. Now, because that goes with the Mercury retrograde, and you think, oh, it's a Mercury retrograde. Targeted individuals know what I'm talking about. And that's the lovely thing, they didn't take it. But the thing is, they switched it. They took that, and I had a pyramid, a glass pyramid, that I was putting all them over the altar of the deceased human traffickers that use real estate. That's the altar in my bedroom right now. Okay, because there was too much dumbfuckery energy, and so, I'm not gonna close the window. Elon, who took my glass pyramid? Okay, somebody put it on my penis because they want to grow it? I don't know. So on their penis, you see, that's the dumbfuckery. That's their way to find out if I have a penis or not. You know what I have there, right? Do you mind bringing back the glass pyramid? And I want that Timamundi tincture. I want to go back home because I think it's going to worry for me. It's going to ponder, have I abandoned it? Is it that I don't want it back? Because you haven't been using that for a good cause. And you know that it backfires already, then I think it's appropriate to bring it back here. The people that put the needles, it's those needles It's kind of like it's a screw. Those things that you, I have no idea what you want with that. That looks very dumb, and it kind of looks like something that I added to my deceased traffickers that use real estate. Okay? So if that is any way phallic, there might be impotency. Don't blame me. Like don't you know, don't put a phallic thing in my lawn and it won't get done the way I do with that. Remember, it's like we're evolving to willing consent. Okay, that's way better abundance, way less stupid. That's just very fucking weird. But thank you for letting me know that the passion fruits have been growing. What can I say? Elon, have you seen the tincture of Caitlin? I need it back. Okay? Now Mercury is retrograde. It's a good time to retrieve, like a golden retriever. Retrieve. Okay, you wanted to fetch, and now you retrieve that. Okay, it's a retrieve. We can play fetch. You know, I think I told that story when I was 12 and there was someone with me, and she had a friend that they wanted to film me with the dog licking my vagina or something. So they gave me some tea with a cognac, and I didn't like the taste of cognac. And I was just like not going with anything. Then her friend told me that that woman's named Karen Moskowitz, and she was later a kindergarten. Now, there ain't nothing wrong. I would think she changed, she this, she that. But during the Me Too, she said, "You once lied to me, and I don't know whether to believe you." And I'm like, darling, I told you that I'm communicating with the X Files, because I was like, that was like to get back at you. I was like, I was just doing something harmless, and I told you that underneath I have a cassette where I'm communicating with Scully and Mulder. Wow, that for sure is a big lie. That must mean that I must invent the whole damn fucker with me too. You're absolutely right. Your logic is like, are you a kindergarten? What? Then that woman I was speaking on the train with suddenly turned the dog something doggish. It's just so. She wanted to know what book had affected me. I was just ranting about the difficulty to read a book as a targeted individual. Okay, and the fact that I did do something about it. And I don't remember, it's like what city was affecting me the most. Like, darling, you ain't no idea who I am. Okay. But you know what I appreciate? Because I said that sexpionage is an inversion of intelligence, and she met me and she heard kind of my story and she believed me and so on and so forth. Now, here's the thing, it's very important to listen, to believe, to validate. It was great work, great job. The thing is, you're not supposed to use that information against the speaker. You're not supposed to frame the person. Okay? Because that means next time I see you on the train, I might not be as kind to you. Okay? I might just ignore you. But that's the thing. The point of intelligence is to get information that creates understanding. When something is not an inversion of something, then that's the point of intelligence. Okay, why was Ido being so malefic? Because he's being programmed by this MK Ultra. Why can't he get out? Because they torture people. Why is he so stuck up in the ear? Because that touches on a core wound. Okay, when I say willing consent, it touches on a lot of core wounds. And he's going through programming that is instilling all these traumas again and again, trying to get him to target me again and again. Okay, that's the thing. That's understanding. And of course, when I fight off this, and I was like, that's human trafficking, that's this, that's that. Okay, that's chain reaction, right? That's just how it works. So, and I do the best I can. Okay, you reach out. Okay, I saw there was something planning on Royce, and I reach out and I can warn. That's all I can do. But the thing is that the the use of information against a person is a facet of the cult of betrayals. Okay? That's the thing. Yeah, this is why the CIA had such trouble training remote viewers, because it would be blocked the minute you want to do something malefic. If you want to enslave humanity, people will begin to fail tests, and then you try to torture them and make them do that anyway, but then you get fractured information because the soul is fractured. That and the fact that it's a sense, you can't test for it. It diminishes, okay, the sense. But they use remote viewers to target individuals instead of to find kidnapped and missing people. And then they use remote viewers on the Freeze Foundation, okay? That was like the Christmas, it was Royce, but very likely his sister's gonna be there too, right? And it's not coming from the foundation. Kelly said very clearly, she said, of course, there's, channeling or, intuition or something like that. That is fine, but we can only get concrete information. Now, when it comes like a case of Code Cassandra, okay, where she had a pass card and a phone and something like that, and it's like, of course, it was very likely she was even murdered for that, and then who knows, okay, what they wanted to do with the body. She was very likely refusing to be sexpionage or refusing to traffic drugs. And that's what happened. Now they take all of her identity and then they would put it some other place. Okay, and then the only thing that the Freeze Foundation can ask for is, did you see, does somebody have the passport or this? Of course not. Or they can render that identity useless. And then they say, yes, of course I have it. I found it in some blah, 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 blah. And then they get the 100 grand, which is 100,000 euros, basically. And there's nothing she can do about this because the police Okay, sorry for playing Peter right now, but the police would not let them use remote viewing. Now, you think Peter was not intuitive? You think that it didn't pass on in the family? It was very likely yes. Okay, so now they send a remote viewer to target, very likely no more than one, to target for the family, and try to create all these betrayal cults between everyone. And that's probably been going on for quite some time. And then the more they try, because the thing is that they're afraid that the people will remember. And for me, that I walked out of the Me Too in 2000, like 15, 16, okay? And I've been targeted. I'm like recovering, trying to recover just more things and more things and more things and more things. It's like the more they try, the more something is exposed, because I begin to connect information of stuff that they did, giving urges to person to do. Like I put in also the name of that Ido Nevo in that ball that you put in the freezer to like release energetic cords. And I didn't know why, but I was like, that's intuition. Okay, and then it's like at the end I was taking that out. So of course that was the freezing. So that was tying in Ido Nevo with the name Ido Nevo with the name the freeze. That's a part of a ritual that they do to tie in the connections. And I'm like, I had no idea. Because even if I was thinking about that Ido Nevo, which later would ask me to be a TA, or the secretary would ask me to be a TA, I never found out who wanted me there. I was very surprised because it's a giant course. And then, I wasn't thinking about the defreeze thing. And I was getting like, now with defreezing your passport, or taking some of the freeze. Now we defreezing that. And I'm like, okay, the freeze. Why? And then I was like, it would take a lot of taking away sexual harassment that comes in the astral to understand that there was an attempt to tie the name, so my name with his name, with Ido's name, with the freeze name. And why would they do that? Is just those things. I was running for politics. So now you see how much effort is spent on this betrayal cults. And why did they want Peter? Because it was a glitch in the matrix. Not only did he tend to the cases that nobody tended to, okay? For a woman, an immigrant prostitute that was murdered, he would go all the way to Australia and then get busted for trespassing because he was looking for the criminal, and they work with the police. Okay, so okay. But that's the truth. It's not that the police doesn't want to do its job. It's like they're infiltrated, just like the IDF is infiltrated, just like your government is infiltrated, just like your welfare is infiltrated. I have a colleague, astrologer Adam Ellenbas. He was a social worker. Now, he did not kidnap children to satanic ritual abuse. I believe him. That doesn't mean that next to him wasn't somebody that did, and that's a Russian roulette. Now, if you're a target individual, they make sure you are on time for the correct person. When I was coming to see my house, and it was not even everything was going like away until I came the next day, and then I went for the head of that place where he said to live in the place that I didn't know it was his. Okay. And you wouldn't suspect any, because there's 3 families living there. You wouldn't suspect anything. It's like it's his place. They live there with the family. So absolutely wouldn't suspect anything. But that's just what they do. They get you in with the family. But that family has a dynamic. Okay? And that dynamic is trauma bond. Same with Ido. Okay? He was like, at the end of the year, I remember when he spoke with us TAs, and he said, if you're dating a student or something like that, is no problem, just to make sure that I know. And then with one of the TAs, which I was like, of course it is a problem. You're not supposed to date a student. It has to be some equity. And at the end of the year, he would get it from his instructor, was accused and found guilty in sexual harassment. I just like sexual harassment. Probably said something bad to a woman. And I wasn't even reading that because I was triggered 2 years after. I was not in the power of 3. It was 2 years after. the dumbfuckery, okay? 2 years after, I get the courage to read the testimony of the woman that was hurt by this Schneider guy, and she was sexually assaulted in a hotel room where they would take the TA or the helpers, like I don't remember even what is called, the assistant, academic assistant, whatever. And that guy tries to rape her, and and she's completely in trauma. And but that was the case that she somehow managed to litigate. And then I learned that in most cases in academia, they would blame, if you complain, they would blame you and they would litigate you. And I was like, what the damn fuck? I had 4 litigations against me for within the academia, and that and on February 14th, okay, we resolved that. Or so I thought. Okay, so anybody but Ito was litigated. I'm like, women, what's wrong with you? Why you esquiash to his dumbfuckery? You're just a fucking cult. And that's what it works on, betrayal. Telling to the woman in charge for sexual whatever, it's like, hey, there's a certain structure, it forces you to do certain things. When I expose you, I expose the structure, because you as an agent didn't show me that you have the ability to do something different. Then it was another one that then she already had to enforce, like the actual law. So, and that's nothing next to Netherlands, okay? So, if you know, you know. But the thing is that you have these weird situations, and they're so afraid that you're going to remember and understand something that they try again and again. But the more they try, the more they expose, because I would have never tended to that. Who remembered that I did this ritual of, it's not ritual, it's basically you put some notes with names of people that you want to release energetic cords, kind of to purify. And then I was getting this intuition to put the name Ido Nevo. And then I was like, okay, I will put that name as well. Let's listen to my intuition. Then you move it out and you take that, that you forget about, you take that thing out. And of course it defreezes. I didn't who remembered that? And this is why those Masons are so afraid of woo-woo stuff, because that's what they do with that. So they think that if you're doing energy cleanse, you're probably going to create a homicide. Okay. So so that's where it goes, and everybody's afraid of remote viewing. But remote viewing was used for decades to solve cold cases and to find missing people and kidnapped people. Now they're using that to target individuals. There's such a workforce. I mean, there's so many people that could tend to so many things. And then what happens is they begin to target. Okay, you get one giant that spoke against the WHO and exposed how the police is working with organized crime, basically, and not really doing something when it comes to people that were murdered, and tending to those cases that nobody tends to. And even if it takes, going all the way to Australia, and then they're like, okay, that bloodline. Yes, and then the entire bloodline is targeted. I would never have guessed that Ido had anything to do with attempts of assassinating Peter, and later, at least what I know is very likely Royce, and around that Christmas thingy, because he's doing this Christmas movie. I would never have guessed that. I would never, who, I would never think that, and that's the case, because if I would just go out of that job and I would, what did I do? Sell workshops of, like, sex positive sex pleasure, self pleasure, um, and yeah, you can see that. Like, you see this. This is testimony. What you're hearing is testimony. You're not imagining. Okay, and if you know, right, what goes on. And I would just go about my life, and then I learned aromatherapy and, making salves. And in the first course, we had an ex-student that she was selling online, and because it's like stuff that you would use also to cure wounds and stuff like that, then her ex-husband began to litigate her over nothing. And I was like, well, I wasn't taking that into consideration in any way. I want people to use that before the issue becomes medical. And then, thanks to Caitlin Kopik, I would discover about astrological magic, how it's done. Because I was told by Yari Trubelsky, that you can combine that with astrology and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm learning what it's associated, maybe in the future. And when I was first looking at Sphere and Sundry, then I was like, okay, I'll never do that. And here we are. So, with me doing a talisman that has, let's just say, you see, that makes more reason why people would be curious. But I think any astrologer who's doing talismans, I think by now a lot of them are, is doing what I'm doing, like they should be capturing the bisextile, okay? The Pluto trine Sedna, we should be capturing that, okay? Like, if you're not doing that, do that. Get yourself some honey, get yourself some salves to do, learn how to do a salve, okay? Learn how to do something that stands the test of time. Okay, like, start working. We don't have that very often, and I'm not going to, like, that's the thing that I want to say more about that. I have said more about that. But it gets people, okay? Like, what, you think that Sphere and Sundry doesn't do the bisextile? I don't believe they don't, okay? I don't believe they don't, okay? Maybe we'll find out about it, because that would take a lot of time to see what it does. But I think any person does that. But and so, and also, for every person, it's going to be unique because it's from your location. So the election is going to be different. I had, for example, for Annuncia, I was buying Helwa's Astro's Annuncia, and I was doing my own Annuncia, because those would be two different Annuncias, okay? I had not that good election from where I was at, and she had one fine election for that. So, of course, if I did the talisman, I would also buy with somebody that did that with a better election. And I think that's the same was for Antares. Me and Caitlin were using the exact same election, without knowing about that. I was doing, for example, for my Venu Regulus, I think Sphere and Sundry was doing Sun Without Sin for the same election that I was doing the Venu Regulus. So it's like it's two different, okay, energies. So you see how it works. You don't have to worry about competition. It's actually, the more there are, the merrier, because everybody has their unique flavor, and you're gonna be, you're gonna be experiencing it. The more you're into that, the more you would like to experience that. So that's just how it works. Okay, and usually you buy from one person, then you get to know another person. You're like, oh, what's that person doing? And then you begin to also allocate the budget, and you make sure you have abundance work, and that how it goes on. Okay, then you catch up on something, you tend to something, or something happens, and you learn to work with the energies. But that's particularly, the things that people are so afraid of are usually things they don't have to be this scared of. Not in the sense there are no scary things in the world, but in the sense that people usually do scary things because they are afraid of something they shouldn't be so concerned about. Okay? And that's the thing with power. The more you exert power over others, basically, the more you're losing your power. And I'm not talking about like asserting your sovereignty, stuff like that. I'm talking about, trying to oppress other people. That's where the dumbfuckery begins to unfold. And really, so many survivors were at this point where they would never have exposed that much if there weren't such an investment in trying to silence them. Okay? And that is, I guess this is also the breakthrough for exiting the cult. For many people. And I'm not saying it's in any way easy, but it's not like when you're within the cult, you don't go through horrors. I mean, you do. It's what I said to Americans. Okay, love is loving. Love that is actually loving. Love is loving. And so, yes, there was a lot of time invested to get people to obey rules, obey this. But then when the rules get funnier and funnier, people think it's going to be like the frog that is being cooked. And by the time it is too hot, it doesn't jump out of this. I'm like, yeah, it happens to some people. Per every frog are going to be 7 frogs that jump out of the dump. We're like, hey, that's nice, pleasant, warm, too hot. The fuck you doing? And they're like, okay, human trafficking. Okay, well, there's crime against humanity. Okay. And it's like, you get out of that, and it's like, you didn't really say that. Yeah, you're right, but I was right. And like, you shouldn't say, the fuck, you were going to kill me there. You cannot do a frog without a froggy voice, right? It's like, please take that back. Okay, what the fuck were you thinking? We cooked my friends like that. You cooked your what? That's what you do to your friends? Unbended for Deming. Now that was just the mole X of a global network for the WHO, until you connected us against the WHO. That's the thing. And then you hear survival testimonies. They will remember the pedophilia if they remember anything, but not like, wait, what? What will you say? What? They'll just remember the what? And then you're like, oh, that's why there's so many people dealing with incest. Now, you see, when you're neurodivergent and naive, you get into a lot of troubles. But you also have an approach that nobody has, because I literally couldn't stand those misdar thingies. And when I was curious about the Mason, is when I was a student by Ito, and he was talking about the Mason, I was like, oh, that's the Enlightenment, folks. I must go there. Is there a lodge that accepts women? Yes, there is. You have to keep everything secret. You need to declare you believe in some sort of God. Ito believes in God the way that I believe, I don't know, in the CIA, being benevolent. JFK. Anyway, he was murdered by a mafia. Yes, that was the Mormonoptevatic global intelligence mafia. That's the same secret societies that he said is not going to be secret anymore. Yeah. So, oh my God, when I was looking at right wings versus left wing assassination threats in the Netherlands, and I was like, so which CIA would you like to be assassinated by? Because they have this most racist party. ISPJ, something like that. You won't find that on Google. You have to look for Deming. And then they removed the Deming search word. And they have all the tea, and then they say, we want only 75% Dutch people to be in Netherlands. And I'm like, there isn't any. Like, that's diluted. Okay, they're cloned. Nobody will be left in Netherlands. That's a Shoah. And it was like, yeah, the Qua files, that was not. Why do I find the testimonial of why do I find the testimonial of Annika Lucas a fraction bit more, reliable than the party that wants to have? We don't have that level of concentration of Dutch bloodline in the Dutch bloodline from the corona to, not for the days and not for the vans. If that guy looks half Jewish, half Italian, the fuck maybe they are. Anyway, satanic ritual abuse depletes fertility. Okay, that's what it says. So they had to use other wombs, and then eventually they would have to use other sperms, because the sperm count, okay, it's depleting. And it's not like Israel is any better. We're topping IVF and baby swapping. They have that also in Netherlands. So Pluto in Aquarius is 5th house for Israel. It's 8th house for Netherlands. All the things that have been swiping under the rug are gonna be okay. So where did they have the Saturn? I don't remember, for that 1800s chart. Yeah. um, that's actually not searchable by Google. Okay. We thought we don't have the chart for Putin. We actually do. Like, that's way more transparency than I'd expected. Um, Elizabeth April talks about cloning and how they use face masks. So, when you think about the clones unmasking, that would be fascinating. Um, and that's just the notion of power, okay? You get one person who's like, was that sexual? Or is that kind of weird experience? I was like, oh, well, you go about your life, you get out of there, and you're supposed to go about your life. But if you meet that everywhere, you kind of tend to that, okay? And then don't let you go, to don't let you go, to don't let you go. And then you're like, okay, well, I have to speak up to just even stay alive. Like, okay. And the more energy they put into that, the more ridiculous the entire scenario looks like. And you understand the more people are dealing with that. I remember, when I spoke with someone who eventually, I thought he was Slavic on OkCupid, and then he was Syrian and Babylonian. He said he's Babylonian. And he was Armenian and Christian, Catholic Christian. So when I talked about it, was like the joke that Israeli, that they say for the Israelis, you don't have cars, you don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have that. He wanted to be for the Mossad, but which is why I had to cut contact, because I was like, hey, dude, you're too controlling for me to go through that with you. Um, but the thing is, I asked him about Syria, and he said, well, you just don't talk about the government, and everything is okay. Now, that person, he had Aries placement. I think he was an Aries. That person did not know to shut up. Okay? He had like pro LGBTQ signs on his Facebook in Syria. And not only that, was later interviewed, he talked about um, the Bashar al-Assad kind of like not asking people about their religion, whereas the rebels did. He said before the rebellion, nobody would ask me what my religion is. Now they do. He's Christian and so on. And now it became an issue because he's a minority. So that is not the type of person who was like, okay, he was too controlling for me to like date him or anything. But the thing is that that's not a person who would shut up. So people are reliant that people will not speak about the government, will not speak. Nah. And to invest in, think about North Korea's style of dictatorship, the energy that goes into that, and then they have to work with the brakes. So they have to send troops to, um, to Europe, and like, then they're not going to come back. Like, you know, even if I think, oh, I'll give you some lesson about internal politics in the IDF. I didn't serve in the army. I went to university, and we were taught a course about political regime in Israel. And this was basically Professor Dani Filk that was the teacher. And the thing about the army, so let's say the 67 war, it was, I make it like the words wrong because there's just so many, right? And then they say operation, so they wouldn't have to pay insurance. The bully call is try to get money on your defibrillators for the V shape. Okay. Anyway, we were talking about the army. So the people served in the army. And then at that war, it's not just the Ashkenazi elite served in the army, but also kind of like the Moroccans and the Maghrebs, all these people that Ben Gurion said they're salt of the earth. Um, but Golda Meir thought a bit differently. Okay, none of them was worth like the people of like Moshe Dayan and all the, I guess, pre-vacciners. I don't know. Anyway, after that, there was a change in the political regime because a Polish guy named Begin. Yes, Begin. By the way, another Polish guy named Ido Nevo said that Begin was Polish. That he completed on Danny Field, and that's a very important addition. So a Polish guy turned to the Moroccans and said, "Hey, you are not." What was the word? I don't know. It's like, and he got the votes of the Moroccan after the war. And he said, "Hey, you served in the army. You this, you that. They can't mistreat you anymore." And basically by the service in the war. So you think about this war, with a lot of women serving. Right? It's not the same. We had an Israeli pilot at the very beginning of like the 1948 or something, and then they outed that because they made a pact. Okay, Ben Gurion did something that some people say is very stupid. He said that, but it's actually, I think it's not, because he said that the Orthodoxy will not serve in the army because there's like a fifth legion. And believe me, any fundamentalist is a fifth legion. That's a tautology. So he made a pact with them. You guys are not going to serve in the army. And then people got pissed and wanted to recruit them. And this happens again right now in Israel. They're like, let's recruit these guys. Let's this, let's that. I'm like, yeah, the army is not the same army. Okay. And that brings fundamentalism. Okay, and it's like not only do we have that Misdar Templars infiltration, okay? But the thing is that, the Bedouins and the Druze, they serve in the army, and they serve, by the way, also those that are remote viewers, that, the way that they use remote viewers, okay? We have a homeless person where I live. His name is Muhammad, and he was taken by the army he said, to kidnap people and to do spells on them. Then one day he was in his apartment, then they came to kidnap him, and they said he has to leave, otherwise they would take the family. And he lives in the city, kind of like the town's full, okay, in the city center. He cannot go into the neighborhoods. He must stay, and he could get an apartment, but he was afraid to be assassinated. Heineken, I don't know. But anyway, the fact that these people are serving the army kind of gets them to be more accepted into society. It's like a key to the society. You serve in the army. In Netherlands, I didn't see politician of those that I saw. I didn't see a politician that did not serve in the Royal Dutch Army. Okay. For example, my father served in NATO, so he would have the bases in Zwolle. But that's distinct. We talk about the Royal Dutch Army, or it's not. I don't know for the hierarchy of that. And you wouldn't see across the politicians people who didn't go to the army, I think. So you see how that is kind of like an entrance too. But also for Americans, I know that people go to the army and then they get a first degree. So if you don't have money to pay for a degree, which means you are not all money, then you don't feel like, sex trafficking, then you actually Another option is another form of trafficking, which is going to the army. And that is how you get the workforce for Iran, Iraq, and so on, because they go back, and if they come back, they're basically homeless because they wouldn't survive a degree. So most of the suicides there is not in the army, it's in the first degree. In Israel, it's in the army. I don't know, it's like it's Netherlands. But we're having a conversation. And then, like, if you wanted to have a degree in Ivy League, to have funding and have support, if you be accepted, then you would have funding if you finished the army. And I think that's how Tim Ferriss got his degree. And he was suicidal as fuck even throughout his degrees. He was probably being with a ton of PTSD afterwards. And so, yeah. It's like right now when there's mandatory army recruitment, and I'm listening to Reinhard May, new edition with the conglomerate of artists. Nein, meine Söhne gebe ich nicht. Okay. Anyway. Absolutely. So, but you see, if we all go JFK on it, perhaps we can all retire. We have to unionize. Okay. So that's a little, it's not a teaching about power, it's just like sharing with you my thoughts about this thing. And we talk about NATO. I'll finish with the story that I like talking about, is that head of NATO was what inspired by Robert Caro, about that Moses guy that shot off entire city to build New York. And that guy got promoted by going for unelected positions in society. So I don't know if he was just like inspired by that and what, like, I don't, but anyway, he was Prime Minister of the Netherlands for almost 2 decades. So, okay, that's just, it just happened. A gender contributor to the wave, that makes more sense, but you wouldn't think Prime Minister. And now head of NATO. So they want to replace him with robots. But that teacher that told me that her teachers have an otherness that is like Teflon, I wonder if they, like, the way they clone people, they would clone like the programs, like simulate the nervous system. Because Mark Rutte, for example, has this Teflon, because he's like, nothing sticks, okay, into his reputation. And if they want to have like a robotifying, like, it's kind of like taking a model of that nervous system and trying to instill it in people like a program. Okay, so they would have this Teflon programming. And I guess that's how it works, a part of how it works. I mean, I know that there is programming, there's like the Alice in Wonderland and those things, but then it's like, there's a Teflon programming. You know what? Maybe I need a little bit of a Teflon programming when I do this, you know. I mean, maybe we'll have a little Teflon download for targeted individuals. Anyway, the thing about decentralization of regime is that when people want like space and they're like public figures and they're like not the head of the entire world, then you have less legitimacy to bother them. Whereas where it's not that way. But you see the dedication that goes into targeting individuals is something. Um, so, yeah, that's just those weird regime stuff. But I'll share with you for last again the story of a woman that says she ran away from North Korea, and she told me that she began to move her body, and as she began to move her body and expand on that movement, she could escape. And she liked the fact that I was moving around. Okay, I was doing a little bit of martial arts, of it's just moving my body around, exploring the space, and so on. And that was a great channeling. It was a good teaching. Um, and that's for her. Okay, she would go to do like some singing and dancing in the central station and ask for people for money, and then go back. And she always had this like lovely colors. She even gave me a bag, but I couldn't like keep it with all the things. And she got offended. But that's just, it's difficult to communicate. But that's the thing. Is like if you, and even if she escaped from South Korea, okay, she probably had a reason to escape. Okay, so that's something where you want to keep that in mind. And I remember during the lockdowns, it was right after I left Itma, or ran for my life from the therapist. Okay, so psychologist, mind you. And yeah, a moment of silence for trying to do actual therapy in a tyrannical. I remember I had a dream that I was running away from him and he was the head of North Korea. I was at the parking lot and I was turning around and I think I was stabbing him or something. I'm not sure what was I doing. But that was that. Okay, and it wasn't looking like Kim Jong-un. But that was that. I mean, maybe he's a programmer and it's his job to come up with some scripts or something. Anyway, I was running for my life. And then, of course, there's all those weird things that happen when you escape. It had to do with the memory and the things that I talked about and the weird rituals that I didn't understand. It was rituals. Like I just didn't think anybody would invest that much energy in me. Okay, like I never thought I'm that important. And when you see that there's so many targeted individuals, you understand that that's really like they're losing power. I have to go after people like this. They're probably very weak. And I have to police what people do, what people move, and so on. They're probably extremely, volatile. So I was running away from there. Oh, and that Itamar told me, they don't know what's energy. Okay, like nobody would believe you. And later there was COVID. And so all the non-monogamy groups on Facebook were meeting their lovers, even just for a conversation, through astral projection. that was just the effect of COVID. And I was speaking because I was doing the ESP essay. I was speaking with my Ukrainian bestie, Jewish Ukrainian, I just said that. But the thing is, he's from Dnipropetrovsk, or something like that. And so he said that in Soviet Russia, that the espionage is so common because the regime was so. So imagine North Korea, okay? I'm not saying that like idealizing. It's like people probably like half time they're not in the body. Um, yeah, but you have to understand that of those who target you, there are like there are also people that like they would have a part that would try to help you, and a part that is supposed to target you, and it's like you don't even know what's going on, but some of the information is like truly valuable, and that's can assist you to escape as well. When I heard colleagues talking about like zombie apocalypse and stuff like that, I thought they're like into zombie movies. It's like, okay, that's a genre. No, they're Americans. Until your colleagues that would speak about literally everything and have zero ability to shut up, okay, would not mention the trafficking rings and would not mention the violation of the First Amendment, and I would only hear about it for someone who commented on their channel, I would like, what, is it that bad? Like, I know the United States is surveilling. There's a difference between surveillance and, doing something about that. It's the minute that they start to do something with that it becomes an issue. And I don't think that like my way. I'm an open source system type of person, and it's compatible with Pluto in Aquarius in terms of security. Because you're gonna have masses of people trying to target people. And it's like, okay, what's gonna happen? Okay, you're gonna find another alternative. If you don't want us to be on Instagram, we won't be. If you don't want us to be on X, we won't be. You're gonna find out where we live. You know how many people told me where I live when I live in that village? I'm like, okay. I do it. I'll go talisman. The street lights go boom. They don't ask these questions anymore. Okay? It's the minute I have to think about locking the door that your cameras and my mastermind, together with the network of people that are going through this, have a problem. Okay? And this is masses of people. And by the way, people say, but they kidnap people. There are masses upon masses of remote viewers channeling with kidnapped people, connecting with families, supporting energetically. I'm not idealizing being kidnapped. It happened to me. Not, yes, it's not like it happened to like 7th of October to people, but definitely the preparation for that. And Um, and you need to know that just, that just raises the awareness double, triple time. Because at first people are going to be like, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do that. Okay, they try to make you small, make you small, make you small. What happens when you atomize a person? Okay, you condense, they become an A-bomb. And that's what we saw in the basement in the Netherlands. He had a couple of blocks from my uncle. 42 apartments evacuated in some rural place in Netherlands. The name sounds a bit like walnut. I don't remember the name. Okay. Just out of the blue. Uranus moon in on Beta Persega. Uranus on the moon of Netherlands from the 1800 chart. It's ruler of the chart for Netherlands. So unfortunately, when Uranus goes direct on that point, that is towards April, unfortunately, we're gonna have, I don't know if something like that, but something we're going to be revisiting that topic. I don't know if by an event or not, but that's something, to keep in mind. COVID was very, very strong in the Netherlands when Raoul was in Gemini, which was the 12th house. So yeah, not from Ken. So yeah, I think that all in all, we understand, because even when you think about power, you think about, what can I do about it? What can I do about what I can do? You just surrender that. I just live about your life. And so sometimes the result is an even greater sense of freedom. Or you talk about even more than you would talk about, or you go for to places, or you communicate with people even more than you would communicate with usually. And so that is, again, that's just a part of the thing. You think about it, you're in a shelter with people, then some people from Korea, some from Algeria, some from United States, some from Brazil, some people sex workers, some people spies, some people Romania. Like, you're just like, you communicate with, and they create kind of a community. I had 2-3 years after that, people calling in to check if I found housing, because they got housing because they were not, Dutch. And I said, well, I'm okay, but I can't tell you where I am because I was tending to human trafficking. So, and of course, the case not updated and so on. But it's not just like local police. There's also for the government, and it's also for Polaris. Okay. And that's something that, and the remote viewers that are used to locate people are used to target them and try to recruit them to all kinds of things rather than to locate actually missing people. And that sense of nobody's coming to save you is what they try to create, but in essence, people begin to gather. It's not even that you begin to save yourself. You're like, hey, you see a person that needs help, or you see something, or then you begin to take action more so than you would. And ideas come to you because, like, hey, if I was tending to my own issue with housing, I was like, oh, there's a property here, there's a property there. You can do squatting here, you can do squatting there. or there is, or you run into more people. It's like they're energy sensitive. They're energy sensitive. Something about the housing, and now it happened to me because like that's energy sensitive. That's targeted individual. Oh my God, she was a targeted individual. I should really talk to her, darling. You're a targeted individual. That's what's going on. It's to do with the masonry and the real estate because you're a woman and you live by yourself and so on. And they try to deplete the ability now of women to live alone and then of men to live alone, and so on and so forth. So you kind of get more information, and also you get more information of various people from various ranks. If I attended to political assassination prevention, and that's the same as a woman that leaves violence, a child that escaped a toxic home, a politician, a journalist, okay, a military commander. It's like it's the same thing. They operate in the same way, and it's the same cult that does that. And then I was like, oh my God, the women that escape a violent husband. This is why the abuse has such familiar patterns, because they all come from a cult. And once you say no to abuse, you begin to connect the dots. This is why at every juncture they try to keep you in. And then there's a channel of communication facilitated. Okay. And I think even insiders people, because if I think about the woman I spoke to, insiders people are kind of like, well, but if you talk about the people outside, they'll say you need to take the pills, or you need to this, you need to that. I was like, no, I was talking with a woman outside, and she was like, she knew, she understood, she got that, okay? So maybe I have a more ability to explain, so I need to speak with more people and so on. But even people from the inside, because they're like, nobody came to save them, and they don't know how to get out. And they don't know where to, because it's literally at every juncture, and some of them are really like high profile people. So it's kind of like we tend into that, set a boundary, tend into that, and paving our way out of like that virtual cave. And for some people it's a very real cave. And everybody contributes from their information. Then it's like, well, for me, like willing consent is like a no. And it's like, some people never met that. They're like, what the fuck was that? Because everybody, it makes sense for them. Like, what if I was a woman? So I would suck that dick and I would get that, what the fuck? Okay, it was like, no, that actually affects your nervous system, your genitalia, your level of anxiety, your ability to move, your ability to think straight. You become addicted. There's so many effects to that. I'll just do that you're like, no, you'd slaughter the person. That would be traumatic, but you want to be in a force, in a power position towards that. Like, I would trade weapon before I would do that, because with weapon, okay, but then for the also torture and rape for the people who trade weapon. But the thing is, and for the people that ask us, for many of them, that they were tortured, and it's like they dissociated, they don't remember that sometimes. So, and because they are depleting of the feminine, so people would not be able to speak. And it's like, if it's not okay to be a woman, then anything that reminds of a woman is not okay. Then talking about something or being vulnerable is not okay, and so on and so forth. And it makes it, challenging to recover. But it's not about. But even when you, like, before I went to that Itamar, I went to an EMDR person, because I was looking for therapy. We don't have to speak. Everybody told me you have to speak about it. I didn't know what to speak about. So I want to also emphasize that, okay? Like, it can take time. And unfortunately, when I was going to therapy, it was like, of course I speak publicly, because it's not like you can. But anyway, even if you go to therapy, you need to speak publicly, because it's usually outer planet to inner planet. It needs to be out in the open. That's the thing. Okay, if what caused it was secrecy, then to shed light. This is another thing with Pluto. You put something in the light, and it becomes more authentic. And then people are able to understand each other. And I think a lot of the fear is that nobody will believe you, nobody would get you. And because for the many people inside, they had to also commit a lot of the crimes, okay? They had to rape, they had to torture, they had to electrocute, they had to strap people down, okay? They had to do that. That was a part of the thingy. And so, and that's on tape, okay? And they had to continue doing that. That it seems so, it's a reality that seems so complicated to explain and to even begin to untangle for me, because I'm third generation to Holocaust survivors. So when I found out that, like, around, politicians and stuff, I was like, hey, that's like a torture death camp of, like, they grew up in a Holocaust. So I had the frame, okay, I had the frame where that was, and even then with that frame, it was very difficult to connect all these dots. And with somebody that it's not like you've been channeling, or you've been like encountering or the content more closely. Then it's kind of like with trauma, it's kind of like you don't want to assume, but you kind of know. It's like until you bring that up, and that can create all kind of emotionally intricate situations, because it's like it's structurally that way. And then for the person, it's kind of like you want to honor for their space, and there's like, well, in the skills, like, you have to explain that, because otherwise they would be framed, and that's just so fucking complicated. And then they would get this programming, and and then they try to assault you, and you have to set the boundary, and like, this is such a weird thing, but there are really so many people living that weirdness, that the power over people is just dissolving. That's what's up. Thank you. So I'm gonna eat my Parmigiano pasta, and yeah, I've been awake since 2 a.m. Hopefully I will get a good night's sleep without weird dumb fuckery. MK Ultra, all MK Ultra, we're gonna have a good night's sleep, okay? I'm programming the MK Ultra algorithm. Everybody has a good night's sleep. Okay, let's take a freaking break. Work that soil. Go outside. Do a jogging. Okay? If you can't go outside, unionize and take a walk together. Okay? The street will be safer. Again, we're gonna start a new day. Positive affirmations. This is gonna be a beautiful day. Everybody who tries to flip on that, it flips back on them. And yeah, I won't let my pasta cool. So bye.